Welcome in to another new podcast from the Association for Materials Protection and Performance. My name is Ben Dubose, and I'm a staff writer with AMP Publications, where I write for Coatings Pro magazine and for Materials Performance magazine. Today, in our latest AMP podcast, we're chatting with Leslie Martinez, manager of conferences at AMP. We just wrapped up the first AMP annual conference and expo, and now that COVID restrictions are almost completely eliminated in most places, we should have a very busy few months ahead, really a year ahead, because we're already gearing up for AMP 2023. And yes, it should be very busy as it pertains to in-person events. Leslie, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks, Ben, for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good place to start, or before we jump into it, a primer of this, we're going to be talking about certainly the AMP 22 that just wrapped up. We're going to be talking about the virtual on-demand option for that event, which is open now and runs through, I believe, late May. We're also going to be talking about some of the key dates and next steps for the 2023 cycle leading up to the AMP Annual Conference and Expo in March 2023 in Denver. And Leslie, of course, as the manager of conferences, is the appropriate person at AMP to answer some of those questions. But I think that a good place to start, Leslie, let's just talk about AMP 2022, what just got done about a month ago in San Antonio. Give us some facts and figures as far as attendees, exhibitors, feedback, just how did it generally go and what were some of the highlights?
Yeah, no, it was like you were said, COVID restrictions are being lifted. We saw quite a few lifted right before the event, and
Right.
which was great because we ended up having a little over 5,000 attendees. Right about 800 were international, which was really exciting to see this year. Um, We had 346 exhibiting companies in the exhibit hall. 66 of those were new companies this year for AMP, whether they did not participate either in Legacy NACE or SSPC. So that was, again, something that was exciting to see. In terms of, we had 65 different activations and sponsorships. So there was just a lot going on throughout the week for attendees. What else do we have? In terms of the programming, we still had over 42 symposia, which had about 425 papers that were presented, either there in person or the authors, if they weren't able to attend in person, they recorded their presentations and we had it available for viewing at the event this year. So that was really exciting to see that we were able to kind of keep that flow going on, even if people weren't able to attend. We still were able to have those presentations there. Um, you know, and honestly, Ben, the general feeling for everybody is that they were just excited to be back this year. It's been 3 years since our NACE members have had an annual conference, and we just had the conference kickoff, or we had the Coatings Plus, the final Coatings Plus event that happened in December, but that was right when Omicron was like
Right.
really at its height. And so a lot of people weren't able to travel for that. So the fact that we were able to get together, just a month ago, I think the general sentiment was just relief and just really excited to see people again.
Yeah, for sure. And anecdotally, as someone that runs the show daily components of these events, it seemed like, with regards to COVID in particular, the March event, the AMP annual conference, seemed a lot more stable. Whereas when we did Coatings Plus in December, there were so many late changes because of either the virus itself or some sort of restriction. Someone that had planned to give a presentation wasn't able to make it in for one reason or another. Whereas in March, not going to say there were no disruptions, but at least it felt like to me that there weren't as many just hectic last minute changes. Is that what it was like for you?
Absolutely. We saw a lot of stuff get thrown at us right, December, right around the times of Coding Plus and even in January. But I felt like in February, everything just started to really kind of settle down.
Right.
And we had a few last minute exhibitors come in those final weeks because people got clearance to travel. And, we had a lot of attendees register in those last 2 weeks too. That was just definitely something that, as somebody that plans the event and sees that was a
Hmm.
relief to see, okay, this is actually happening. Like we're going to be able to come together again. So.
Yeah, and one of the other things about Coatings Plus, and you already mentioned the legacy NACE and legacy SSPC crowds, but there were certainly, I guess, number one, some sadness because it was the final Coatings Plus, but also I think some apprehension because anytime you take people that are predominantly with one of these legacy organizations and then you merge them together, of course, we've been talking about the benefits of, uniting under the AMP umbrella for well over a year now. But definitely from some of the more legacy crowd, there's some apprehension about, are they going to lose what made that particular legacy association special to them? And so I feel like, AMP 2022 in San Antonio was one of the first events that really tested that dynamic. So, did you hear much from either legacy crowd in terms of what they thought? And, did it potentially alleviate some of the fears that they had about, be it corrosion control, protective coatings, whatever their particular field is? I'm sure there's some fear that perhaps their wheelhouse is going to be overlooked in this merger. Was there any sense of relief after things got done that, perhaps they're still going to be represented?
That was one thing. You bring up some good points of just people feeling like they're going to just get lost in the mix.
Right.
And what we really tried to do for this year is bring in more of the coatings content. So we had a lot more, we pretty much had double the forums and workshops this year. And a lot of those concentrated um, on coatings content. And something that we're looking to do as well because of that feedback is we're implementing just some slight changes with how we deliver the content for 23, and to really encourage more of that coatings content in what we have. I know the research committee is looking at how we do the RIPs, the research in progress session, with being more broad and not so specific to corrosion, but opening it up to some of the topics to bring in more of that coatings. Um, like I said, more of that coatings content. So that is something that we're looking to implement with 23, is bringing in even more into the technical symposia, into our forums and workshops, and also into more sessions that are just more informational. Um, just really opening that up to be all encompassing, if you will, more about materials protection and performance. So that's what I'm hoping people are going to see as we dive into 23 and what we've got coming down the pipeline in these coming months. So we'll see. We'll see
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always in flux. In terms of the exhibits, was there anything in terms of particular types of booths, technologies? Did anything particularly stand out as far as the exhibit hall? Because I know this was really the first time in 3 years, early 2019. Was 2019 Nashville? I'm trying to recall.
Yeah, 2019 was Nashville.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, 2018 was Phoenix. It's all coming back to me now. And then of course we didn't do it in 2020 or 2021. Well, 2021 we did have the virtual. Um, was there anything with regards to the exhibit hall, the types of exhibits that stood out as far as the 2022 show and the return to, I guess, some form of exhibit normalcy?
You know, in terms of like what we would see at the NACE corrosion event, definitely a lot of familiarity with that. But I think for somebody that like myself that was not involved with Coatings Plus in the past,
Hmm.
I didn't have a staff member. I didn't have the opportunity to attend that show. But one thing that was different for me was seeing the large equipment. We
Mm,
had the large equipment display. There's quite a few booths that also had other large pieces as well. I love that stuff. It's something different. It's not just a 10 by 10 booth, which those
right.
are great. But I think it's also great to see companies that can bring in some of their pieces of equipment or technology. So that was just something different that I saw this year. Another thing that we tried to do that I think Coatings Plus did well is have like unopposed exhibit hours.
Mm,
So I did my best to not schedule any type of meetings or programming like on Tuesday for about a 2-hour time block on Tuesday as well as on Wednesday, just to really encourage people to go down to that exhibit hall um, and visit our exhibitors. And I think We've got, to be honest, we got 50-50 feedback on that. There are some that really like that. Um, because especially from the attendee side, our programming, I think in both events is always just very heavy programming,
Hmm.
um, that people want to see, but they also want to go down to the exhibit hall, and meet with people down there. So the fact that we kind of force them to have that opportunity, if you will,
Yeah.
uh, I think we got some good feedback on that. So, um, and I think that's something that we're looking to continue.
Hmm.
That's something we are evaluating because, like I said, it was a 50-50 on that, in terms of what people liked. But we're trying to come up with people that didn't like that opportunity. It's more of they liked Thursday, that extra day for like meetings and whatnot. So we're trying to come up with alternatives for them, to really still continue those unopposed hours for our exhibitors, and to give, like I said, give those attendees a chance to take a break from programming, sitting in there,
Hmm.
in the classrooms and really, walk around and see, what's out there, like what's the new technology, what are companies doing, out there, so yeah, that's what we're hoping to see for
Yeah.
23.
We're talking now with Leslie Martinez, Manager of Conferences at AMP. And I want to transition to talking about the virtual on demand option, which is available now and runs through late May, and some of, I suppose, the frequently asked questions that you may get about that for people interested in that particular option. I think a place I wanted to start this discussion, I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago with two executives at KTA Tater, and we're going to run it in the June issue, I believe, of Codings Pro, a portion of the transcript. The podcast is already up on our Codings Pro channel. But they were talking about, trying to get AMP events younger, and the challenge of getting more people in this industry that don't have gray hair was the expression that they used, progressively involved as the months and years pass. I know that's always a challenge, but the reason I bring it up in the context of the virtual discussion, they talked about the virtual offering being really important to young people because for various reasons, maybe they don't have the money. There's all sorts of other things that they're balancing. And they were saying that for young people in particular, the opportunity to take it in virtually, perhaps they get some of those professional development hours, is a really big deal. And it was interesting to me because, when I hear virtual, the first thing I think of is, oh, it's good for the international crowd because obviously in theory they would not have to travel, and that can be a big expense. On the other hand, you mentioned leading off our discussion today that there's a pretty big uptick, especially compared to Codings Plus, in international travel, people coming in from it. And so I guess I'm curious, just in the overall demo, in terms of the virtual on demand, certainly I think a lot of us just superficially think about the international crowd as a big beneficiary of it, but talking to people on the ground, it sounds like that really the young demographic, not just internationally, but here in the US as well, is just as big or even bigger just because they have, just quite frankly, so many things going on, and they may not have the money to do the full blown in person experience. What are you seeing as far as the demos, and is that a fair assessment of the types of people that may be taking this in?
To be honest, Ben, I do see kind of a wide array of people that
Okay.
have, purchased the virtual on demand, but you do bring up a good point, in terms of the our younger crowd, particularly with the students. We've seen this across the board, even with some of the events that we had last year, some of the ones that we have coming up, is just that our younger demographic in terms of our graduate students, like you said, they either don't have the money or they're not getting the approvals to go to conferences. So this virtual on demand is an option for them to still, you know, get that knowledge base, learn what's going on, learn more about the industry. Also, and like you mentioned, you do get the professional development hours, by taking part in the virtual on demand. That is that option. We do have that
Hmm.
option for them. Um, so yeah, with this, I think with this year right now, because of, COVID is still, for some people, it's still kind of an issue in terms of the restrictions that their company has. So we've actually kind of seen, um, I've seen a mix of everybody that's not really falling to one particular demographic or the other, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. It was just interesting to
Yeah.
me because I hadn't thought about it in quite those terms, and that I've always thought about it strictly in terms of the economics. But yeah, with young people, and I suppose economics are a part of it. But yeah, young people just tend to have so much going on, especially the students, as you said, that it's a much easier opportunity for them to still get those hours and get some sort of benefit. As far as the specifics of the process, what are some of the common questions that you get? I guess a good place to start, number one, how long is the virtual content available? And what are some of the FAQs, if you will, that that you often get from people that are potentially interested in purchasing that?
Yeah, so the on-demand option is available until May 31st. So it will be recordings that we had on site for the symposia, the research in progress sessions, some of the forums, not all of them, but some of them, and then our theater sessions will be on demand for viewing. It's available 24/7, and it's open to any individual that was a full conference registrant or that specifically purchased the virtual on demand option.
Hmm.
Um, those individuals will have access. Um, Sales for the virtual on demand are still ongoing, and they'll be available until May 30th, essentially. There's somebody that may come in last minute, but
Hmm.
that is still available for purchase if somebody wants to get access. Um, and yeah, like I said, you still get the option to get PDHs. I know that is for some people, they'll need to either they need to renew their certification or apply for an exam or whatnot. They have the PDH requirements, and the on demand we do allow for individuals to claim those hours with
Yeah.
that as soon as they purchase. So, and then some of the other, I was trying to think of what some of the other questions that we get. One thing that I would say is that if somebody does go online and they don't see a video uploaded for whatever reason, or if they're having issues, to definitely reach out to us,
Hmm.
um, and we can try to help them uh, with that. I mean, we've been through this system several times. We've reviewed, improved, and sometimes there's like maybe one or two videos that slipped up.
Hmm.
But definitely to reach out if they don't see something that they were hoping to see.
Yeah.
For sure.
As far as in-person events and looking forward, we'll wrap up in a few minutes talking about AMP 2023 in Denver. But just the rest of 2022, we've got a lot of regional conferences. I know we've got CTW in the fall. Are we basically back to where we were in 2019, or are we close? I mean, I know, obviously 2020 was entirely virtual. 2021, we started to dip our toes back in the water, especially middle to late part of the year, but it certainly wasn't a full schedule relative to 2019. As far as in-person events the rest of the year, where are we compared to 2019? Are we close to, back to normal in terms of, the more regional events and specialized events that, we typically have on, well, and of course, what I say compared to 2019, obviously we're amped now. Back then it was, in our case, NACE, but are we back to having the majority of those types of smaller association conferences for the remainder of 2022?
We are. We're close. We're not, I wouldn't say we're 100% back
Hmm.
just yet. Definitely within the US, and even Canada, the northern area is having a conference in April. We are we are back in person for the most
Okay.
part.
Awesome.
And then internationally, we are seeing some are that we actually started the year off or even the end of last year planning for 22 to be virtual. They're now saying, nope, we want to be in person.
Mm,
Um, so we are starting to see that. There are still some areas though that are on lockdown or still have restrictions. So um, what some people wanted to have this year for an event, we're having to push to 2023. So we're getting there. We're not 100%, but we are getting there. Especially as we start to see like other countries start to ease up their restrictions or just completely eliminate their restrictions
sure.
altogether. That will help us internationally for sure.
So as we wind down, let's talk about AMP 2023 in Denver, because even though it's 11 months away, I know we're pretty deep into the process as far as planning, and I know the call for abstracts is very early on. where are we now? Or I guess before we go into the dates, just, why was Denver the pick, and what's the really, what's the sense of excitement as far as Denver as a destination next year?
Yeah, so in terms of picking locations, we have the Gulf Coast, so we have like Houston, New Orleans, and San Antonio on rotation every other year. And then when
Hmm.
we're,
Right.
and those are the even years. So when we're in the odd years, we try to change it up to go either, like more West Coast or more East Coast or Central. So Denver was something that the board had picked quite a few years ago, actually. I want to say it was before my time as a manager, like right before my time, but it's a city that it's a great city for a conference. The convention center, I'm actually really excited about the convention center. I think the flow to it is really good, especially compared to some of the feedback we had from San Antonio. So I think for attendees in terms of programming, it's going to be great. It's also in a compact city.
Yeah,
Um, and it's
very
a
true.
destination too. Like people like Denver, there's activities to do like before and after. Um, and so I think that's something that cities that always, that are good as destinations in terms of activities are always kind of a good pick for our members, or at least they like it. Like with Denver, and we've got Nashville coming up in 25, so that's another one.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's just we wanted to kind of take it back to the west side, get more
Yep.
over there to get that membership base, if you will. And even
Right.
the East Asia Pacific, I know it'll be easier for them to travel to this conference as well.
Yeah, and especially some of the international crowd may not have been able to go in 2022 because of the restrictions. So yeah, having it a little more accessible to them in 2023 is definitely not a bad thing. As far as the dates, I know, 11 months away. It's feels like a long time, but it's really not, especially when we're talking about some of the papers, the abstracts. What are the key dates? And if a date isn't set yet, I guess what's more generalized time frame as far as when things start, certainly the call for abstracts, but then when we open up registration, when potentially the housing window starts. I know some of these you don't have the exact dates yet, but just take us through just a general timetable as far as how this typically works.
Sure, absolutely. So what's going to be done different this year is we are reopening the call for topics. So call
Okay.
for symposia topics and forums and more informational tracks. We're reopening that. That's going to be open until May 31st. So if somebody is still interested in having a track or a session at the annual conference, they still have the opportunity to submit until May 31st. The conferences and events program committee is going to be reviewing those topics in June, to where once they select those, then we're planning on opening up the call for abstracts late June, very early July, and that will go through until September, beginning of September. And then in September too, we'll open up like the student poster session call for abstracts, as well as the research in progress call for abstracts. Um, and then let's see, we're going to be opening up housing and registration in late October, if not the very beginning of November for this
Hmm.
year. Um, so that's when that stuff will open. And
Yeah.
again, the conference specifically will be March 19th through the 23rd.
Yeah.
And then,
And but as far as exhibit space, I'm assuming that's already open. That's already
yes,
in
that is
progress as far as
already
rebooking.
open.
Yeah.
Exactly. So people are rebooking now. So if anybody's interested, they can contact us and get their booth selection. That is going on currently.
Yeah,
So they definitely were very active at in San Antonio with booth space
for
selection.
sure.
So it's really
Yeah,
exciting. So.
absolutely. Um, as we wind down, Leslie, for anybody that wants more information on AMP events, AMP annual, or just wants to get in contact with you or anybody else from your team, let's just say they have a question about virtual, as you mentioned earlier. What's the best way that they can access more information or contact you all in conferences?
Yeah, so they can either contact myself directly. My information is up on the AMP annual website for 22. We still have that open just because the virtual on demand is open. Our
Yep.
about page has that info. Also, if somebody wants to go to our calendar of events and just to see what is coming up through this year, each of those events should have the contact information listed for my other colleagues like Megan Leva and Reggie de Borja.
Hmm.
Um, their information is also listed there as well. So calendar of events is definitely a good place to start out and just to get access to the event websites if they want more info.
Yep, perfect. Folks, this is where we will leave things today. And if you want more information on our end in pubs, you can check out coatingspromag.com and materialsperformance.com. And of course, you can check out the broader AMP website as well at ampp.org for all sorts of news related to corrosion control, protective coatings, and of course, the events that we hold now more and more in person, thankfully, to bring this industry together and highlight some of the recent developments in the field. Anyway, with that, we'll sign off. For Leslie Martinez, I'm Ben Dubose. Thanks as always for listening, and please come back soon for another new AMP podcast.